Welcome back to another episode of Chasing Heroin. My name is Jeannine. I'm an addict in recovery. My sobriety date is January 15th, 2015.
Hey guys, Jeannine and Nate. Welcome back. My recovery date's December 3rd, 2022.
And we have with us today Jane you're in Massachusetts, right?
I am. I'm about 45 minutes west of Boston in a city called Fitchburg.
Okay. Well, we have Jane from Pittsburgh with us today. Jane, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Okay, well, cool. Well, we will just jump right in. So why
Okay, perfect.
Start with a little bit about you, just where you're from and how you got started using.
I was born in Leominster, Massachusetts, grew up in Fitchburg. So those are, like they call it the Twin Cities. My parents are going to celebrate 50 years being married July 1st. I'm the oldest of four. And we had a really good childhood growing up. And, I was discussing this yesterday with my parents, saying how, if you've gone to a lot of meetings, you have probably heard people say, I grew up in a typical dysfunctional or alcoholic family. And I did not. I absolutely did not. We vacationed on the Cape in Cape Cod every year. All of us were given the opportunity to go to college. It was never that we had to work to go to college. They would provide us. If we got into whatever college, my sister graduated from Syracuse. Two brothers graduated from UMass Amherst. So we had every opportunity and to succeed. I always took a hard left. I got married at 20 to my first husband. We have a 23-year-old daughter, but we did not last. I went to college for a little bit in Rhode Island, Johnson and Wales. And I never felt like I was good at school, or I didn't want to be good at school. I was good at sports. I was married young. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be a wife, but somewhere along the way that just doesn't ever work out. And I started out using, and it was legitimate, which is, I guess, the scary thing. It was 2002. It was a year after the 9/11 bombings. And I had a doctor's visit to go to a migraine specialist. He gave me 2 8x10 pieces of paper with like 8 scripts on them and said, have these filled.
Oh, shit.
And I didn't know anything. Again, my parents are like, anything they know about recovery, it's because of what I've told them, and, I guess at times it's good because as an addict, you can hide it.
What were the prescriptions for?
So it was for like blood pressure. It was this. So they were anti-seizure medications. They were for blood pressure. They were pain meds. So one of them was Vicodin. A lot of blood thinner, maybe anti-convulsant. So a seizure medication. And I didn't know what any of these things were. So I really thought, as I'm sure my parents did, like, okay, well, this is what he suggested. And I was taking at one time like 12 pills a day as a prophylactic to keep the migraines at bay. And what he said was use Vicodin when you're in pain. But I didn't know what that meant or what it was, and I remember, I don't know, it had to have been maybe a year or so later. I was taking it as prescribed, but I can remember distinctly, and this is when I was with my now second ex-husband, that I felt that wave, that warm wave in the middle of a headache. So like it took my headache away. And I remember being on the phone with a friend of mine from college at the time. And she's like, are you okay? What's the matter? And I'm like, I don't know. I just took my headache medicine and I didn't know. I had no clue. And, you fast forward. So that was, say, maybe 2003, 2004, 2005. And I kept these prescriptions up. Now, in the early 2000s, if you guys remember, it was very easy because now I'm starting to like it more than, for headache use. And it was becoming a daily thing. And I was able to, I would say, doctor shop. I had a primary care physician who was an older gentleman, and then I would see a neurologist, so I could get some here, get some there. I was using it then. And, my second ex-husband, my son's father, I had never done hard drugs. I had never done pills. I'd never done anything. I drank when I was in college, but he actually introduced me to cocaine. And that became, a weekend thing. And then it was like an every weekend thing. And I found out later on, about a year into our marriage, that he was using behind my back. And that was really scary for me because I had never, been with anybody, much less married to someone who had a problem. And that kind of freaked me out. And, over the course of our marriage, and, we had our son, I continued with my scripts and our relationship. And so we bought a house. So I had my daughter who was 10. I had my now son. We had a house, and I just wasn't happy. We ended up getting a divorce, and there's a reoccurring date, which probably for everybody, but September 11th always shows up in my history, mostly for not good things. September 11th was when the Twin Towers in New York were hit. And, I can remember I told my husband that I wanted a divorce. So it was September 11th, 2010. And I ended up leaving our house. We got separated. I had my own apartment. And it's been a string of bad relationships, bad men, low self esteem. And so I'm now going through this horrific divorce again, after trying to convince myself like I can make this work. I've already had one divorce. I already have one child. I'm not with the dad. Now I'm facing another one. Was I even 30? I don't even think I was 30. I might have been around 30 at the time. And I meet another gentleman, and he introduces me to Perk 30s. And I had never had one before.
So I don't know a ton about pills. Nate knows more about pills than I do. Is a Perk 30 stronger than Vicodin?
Oh my God, yeah. So
Okay.
it's like just straight Percocet.
Okay.
There's no Tylenol in it.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
And again, there's a lot of cocaine involved.
Okay.
And there's a custody battle now with my soon-to-be ex-husband, who is a firefighter, and a decorated firefighter, legitimately at that. So here I am. I'm living in an apartment. I've now surrounded myself with someone that's not good. And I really thought that I was fooling people. And September 11th, 2011, my daughter, at the age of 12, decided to move out with her father. And I had had custody of her for, 11 years, 12 years. She comes back from a weekend visit with her father, and he says she wants to move out. So now I have this little toddler. I'm involved in this horrible custody battle with my soon-to-be ex-husband. I'm with a gentleman that clearly I should not be with, but I am. And she leaves, and I'm devastated. And his solution for me that day was to go out and bring back pre-crushed Percocet, which is heroin.
Oh, shit. Okay. That took me a second, but I was like, I think she means heroin.
Well, that's what he called it.
Okay.
That's what he called it. So I was really spiraling at this time. I'm trying to maintain, or I'm trying to keep up. I'm trying to, maintain this image. I've got these two children and this life that I thought in my mind, the house, the literal white picket fence, the children, the husband is crumbling. I'm sure my parents had no idea. I wasn't living with them. And so this is his solution. So again, it's September 11th, once again.
That's weird.
It comes up all the time. And I mean, obviously I knew. I can remember thinking to myself, I will never do heroin. I will never do meth. This was, I'm talking like early 2000s, when I was a kid. Like, I would never do that. Oh my God, that's like so crazy. That's like really crazy. And here I am. And again, much like the pills, I can remember we were sitting outside by a fire, and that was it. It was game over for me. I was working, and I can remember, so if we go forward now to the following June, May, June, I'm sick. I have left that apartment. I've moved in with a coworker of mine. I'm not paying rent. He's not working. It's constantly chasing. Like now you have to maintain this. I mean,
Okay, so you got pre-crushed pills. Did you understand at some point it was heroin, like when you came home?
So and when it was presented to me, it was, oh, they didn't have the pills, but what they did have was pre-crushed Percocet. And then I see it.
Oh,
And I'm
okay.
like,
Okay.
it's brown, it's powder. It's like, I mean, I'm not a total idiot, but at this point I was so devastated that she left. And I'm going through a divorce, and my ex-husband and I, my son's father and I, we do not speak. I actually have him on block, and so it was really ugly, like they tried to get me to sign over my son.
Did you guys start snorting that day, or did you start shooting up?
Yep. No, I've never, knock on wood, I don't know how, never once in all my years did I ever use the needle, even once.
Okay.
I don't know how. I don't know why. I guess I feel like I'm lucky that I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I never did. So it was always just snorting it.
So you proceed to do it for a year, and now you're in this other apartment, and now you're not
Yep.
and what, you're just like hustling to get heroin every day?
Pretty much, yeah. Which, it's like telling my parents I need grocery money, not paying. Like I was still working at the time. And I remember it was probably, I think it was Memorial Day weekend. I had called to get my schedule, and they kindly told me that I wouldn't be coming back to work.
Okay. So they told you kindly, do not return. Got it.
Do not return.
Okay.
And that's a blow. Now I'm really like, holy shit, what am I gonna do?
Right. Okay.
So that's like May. I end up going back to work for another company that I'd worked for, doing like some accounting, some booking, and making money here and there. I don't really remember much about that. What I do remember next is at the end of June, July, I said to my parents, like, I need to go to rehab. And they didn't even know what that meant, Someone had outed me, actually. The woman I was living with called my parents and said, I think she's buying pills from the guy next door to us.
Oh, shit.
And little did she know it wasn't the pills that was doing it. It was the heroin. So I went to rehab in Worcester, Mass, which is about 30 minutes from here, at a place called AdCare. And I didn't last long there. I was there for a few days, and I left, and I picked up my son because I tried to hide it from my ex. I didn't want him to know that I had gone to rehab. I was really trying to keep this all under wraps, like, oh, I can figure it out. I can get better. And I mean, if you've been down that road, you absolutely cannot. So I came out for a few days, of course, was using. And when we ran out of money and I was panicking, and I had my son, and he's like 3 years old, it's in July, I called my ex-husband, my son's father, and I said, I've got to go to rehab. And I went back to Worcester. And I was there for like a week or so, and they had a family visiting day. And the gentleman and I use that term very loosely, that I was seeing at the time, came to visit me. And you know what happens. Like, you already know what happens. Like, I'm out, I'm gone. Well, as any good addict does, you think, well, a new location is for sure going to change me. That is the answer. It's Fitchburg. I'm going to get out of Massachusetts. That's going to cure me, because now I don't have a job. I don't have my children. I don't have a place to live, because while I was at rehab, the woman I was with told them to get our stuff and get out. We've got nowhere to go. He had, his father lived in Florida. And I thought, oh, Florida, that's great. That's fantastic. I didn't ask many questions, and we drove
Oh my God.
to Florida. It's like a 20, 23, 24-hour trip.
Requiem for
driving.
right now. Were you just
Nate just said this is like requiem for a dream right now.
Oh, this is
fuck.
sick.
That's a haul.
Yep. Yep. So again, like, sold anything we had, got as much money as we could, and instead of buying heroin, we buy cocaine. So that gets us to New York.
Wait.
To New York.
You bought cocaine instead of heroin.
Right.
Did you not get dope?
Right.
Did you not get dope?
Didn't you get sick though?
Oh, extremely.
Okay.
Why would you do that?
Extremely.
Why would you do that?
I guess we thought we could get there quickly on the cocaine.
Okay.
Like, let's just drive balls to the wall and get to Florida. Everything is just going to be magical in Florida.
Sure.
It's, Disneyland.
Right.
It's sunshine.
Right.
Disneyland.
Yeah.
And it was none of those things.
Yeah.
My first clue was when we broke down on the George Washington Bridge in New York. So that's like 4 hours into a 20 to 24 hour drive.
Yeah.
Mm.
And we're out of cocaine by New Jersey, which is not that much further from where we broke down.
Right.
It was absolutely the most horrific, horrendous thing I've ever been through. Keep in mind, this is in July.
Yeah.
That makes my stomach turn just thinking about that. Just sounds horrible. Like I can almost.
I wish you could have seen the old green Ford Explorer that we were driving in, the Chihuahua that was a pain in the ass. It was not a good time.
Okay.
Not a good time. And I think it took us 4 days to get there.
Okay.
We broke down in Maryland. I mean, you talk about anything bad happening, it did.
Why don't you should have just cut the catalytic converter off and sold it, and that would have funded the trip.
Well, so he was a mechanic. This person that I was with was a mechanic. And, the hustle was not great. I mean, my dad has always said, and this is like a backhand, and this kind of shows like the kind of dynamic, or like we always like try to make fun of or joke about really shitty situations, And my dad has said to me for the longest time, he's like, well, Jane, if you were fat and ugly, no one would do anything for you. He's like, it's a good thing you're pretty. I'm like, well, it's not for my personality, Dad, because I'm a bitch. But, it was not a good time. And where we went was terrible. And I had never even heard of the place. And when I tell you the name of the place, you're going to say, where the F is that? It's a place outside of Ocala, Florida, which is in Central Florida. Now, there's no beach in Central Florida. What there is the Ocala National Forest of hundreds of miles of frightening. And we were in a place called Ocklawaha. Now, if you want to talk about out of your element, it was terrible. It was terrible. And misery finds misery. And within days of us landing, I then met my newest best friend, methamphetamine. So 2 things were happening in Florida then, which I didn't know about or was oblivious to, was all the pill mills were there. And that was a huge thing in 2012. And bottle meth.
Oh, shake and bake.
What's that?
Shake and bake.
What the hell is that? What's that? What is shake and bake?
It's methamphetamine that you make at your house.
Oh.
And so I have a cooking career now. I put that on my resume. I'm a former chef.
I never knew how to make meth. That would have been easier.
You don't know. You don't want to know. No.
Okay, all right.
It's the most frightening thing you could ever imagine.
Okay.
It's
okay.
as dangerous as you think it is in your mind as I'm saying it to you, I didn't know how dangerous it was, and I was involved in it.
Okay.
There were bottles that were exploded.
Oh my God.
People, instantaneous fire thrower.
Okay.
Instantaneous. And I guess if you're so out of your mind, gone, you don't realize the dangers of it.
Right.
And I guess it kind of surprises me, but it doesn't. But you know how you can look at somebody and you're like, oh, I know what they're up to. So that's what we started doing, and we weren't working and we were hustling and, we show up, people think we're cops,
of course,
which is wild. Here we show up, and I really don't think this about myself, but people think like, oh, I'm pretty, or I don't have like fucked up teeth or a fucked up face. And the gentleman I was with, he was part of, like a culture, a motorcycle culture. So he had that look, and I have this look, or maybe a little bit more. I didn't have tattoos then. I have tattoos now. I didn't have a nose piercing then. But so we really stuck out because this group of people, this community, if you will, everybody knew everybody. And here we show up out of nowhere. He looks the way he looks. I look the way I look. They think we're undercover cops. They're always questioning us. Now, so if you can imagine a group of people, they're shot out all the time, sketched out, paranoid. I mean, it was not a place for me. You know, here I go from this family, and my mother graduating from Syracuse, my sister graduating from Syracuse, my parents still together, vacationing on Cape Cod, and here I am now in the woods, in a place I've never been, surrounded by people that are cooking and making methamphetamine.
Shit. And surrounded by gators.
No. So we weren't down that far. I mean, I'm sure they were there, but where we were like, we're talking woods. We're talking hundreds of miles of woods.
Okay.
And when I say they have compared it to like the Deliverance.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like that.
It's frightening. When I say I wasn't white enough to be there, I mean I wasn't white enough to be there. And things were very segregated still. I mean, so we're 10 years later. I came back 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago now. But 10 years ago when I was there in 2012, things were still like, you know, they're very divided still. And it's crazy to me. And I stuck out like a sore thumb because of my accent. Everybody knew I was from the North. They called me a Yankee. And I'm like, no, I'm not a Yankees fan. I'm a Red Sox fan. You know, like that, just clueless.
Yeah. Okay.
Clueless. And it was, I mean, I just took off with that. And when I look back, or I've told the story to certain people, like my partner now, my boyfriend now, I have shared some really crazy things. And I'm like, people might think I'm lying if you hear like all the crazy that went with it. But it wasn't. It was chaos every day. There was never any sleep. You know, I ended up getting a job at a laundromat. I have left my family. I didn't even tell anybody. I did not tell my parents I was leaving. I talked to them when we were broken down in Maryland, and I just said I left. And I can't imagine what I put them through. And it only gets worse.
Okay, what happened?
And I say October, we're running with this whole crew. I got a job at a convenience store. You know, I'm up all the time cooking. We're buying it. So the other thing too is with methamphetamine and making it, you have to procure a lot of Sudafed,
Okay.
pseudoephedrine.
Oh, you're making pseudo dope? It was still before all that? Okay.
Yep. So again, like I am clueless. And the people that we're with are like, oh, hey, you guys have IDs? Wait, do you guys have a license? And I'm like, yeah. Of course, my license isn't valid. Like I can't drive, but I can still use it like to buy cigarettes or alcohol or whatever.
Okay.
And pills.
Okay.
So we become quite good at, I think they call it smurfing. We would go into CVS, we would go into Publix, we would go into whatever. And, you know, under the guise of I have allergies, and get as much like 120 HCI Sudafed as we could, like the 24-hour, because that makes the best stuff.
Okay.
And we were buying, or we would buy the pills, bring them back to the people that we were with, and then get a cut from that. So we did that for a long time because at the time, I don't think there was a mandate on it yet, but I think now it's like 3 grams per month. So when they scan your license now, that's what they're scanning for, to see how much Sudafed you've purchased.
Okay.
So this was all kind of starting, but Florida is a red flag for it. Like if you went here and bought it, you wouldn't raise a red flag, but down there,
Okay.
you'd get turned away all the time. You can start to look a certain way after many years of making and using methamphetamine.
Yeah.
But again, like we're fresh, I like to feel I kept up, looking normal. And so we would buy it, or I would buy it, and then we would trade it until we learned how to make it. And the gentleman who told us how to do it, he said, it'll be the worst thing you ever learn how to do.
Wow.
And the guy I was with was dead set on learning how to do it.
Okay.
And it was terrifying. And when I heard the podcast a couple weeks ago about the gentleman, I think his name was Ryan, who said he was in a meth-induced psychosis.
Oh no, Matt, when he thought
when he stopped the CHP officer and got himself arrested, yeah.
So when I heard him say that, I deliver flowers for a florist that actually told me 10 years ago to not come back to work. They rehired me.
Oh, cool.
Like after getting my shit together, they just rehired me back. But so I was driving in the van and I hear him say that and I chuckled to myself because I'm like, if you've ever been involved in that and if you've ever seen anybody or you've ever been up for 3, 4, 5, 6, however many days and you've experienced that, it's a real thing. And the guy I was with at the time would go through periods of that. And it was terrible. I mean, we would argue for hours, for days, it was awful. Awful, awful, awful. No sleep. I was running a laundromat at the time. I would work like 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then on Saturdays, all kinds of bullshit going on in the back room there, like and I just wouldn't sleep until I would finally crash. I was working at a convenience store there and we had left a house. We were at a house in a different part. We were outside of Ocala and it was the middle of the night and we left. Now we still had Massachusetts plates. He had a headlight out and we left like someone who's known, like has a long record, a long history, left their house and we drove by a cop car. And you see them turn around.
Oh no.
And the guy I was with said to me, he's like, I've got open warrants back home. He's like, I'm driving, you're the passenger, they won't check you. And he hands me the dope. He hands me the meth. And now this is like, oh God, this is late. I don't know, 11, 12, 1 in the morning. It's late. We've been up for days. I take it like literally. So if you're sitting in a car, I take it, I drop it into my bag. They pull us over, they take him out, they start questioning him. Now, keep in mind, I'm like out of it. Like there's cops. You're nervous, even if you're not doing anything wrong,
right.
But you've been up for days. Oh, that was it. That was it. They asked for the license and registration. The roll of tinfoil that fell out of the glove box might have been the clear indication down in Florida, like something's up. So that's what started the search the car.
Oh, no.
I don't even remember. All I know is I have this giant purse filled with everything, including drugs. And so when they asked me to step out, I pick my bag up and I start to walk out of the car. And he's like, no, put your bag on the ground. Now, again, I'm like 35 years old, never been arrested, never been searched, never anything. I don't know what I say, do, or what, because I've heard different stories like you can refuse. I don't even know. It's Florida. Florida's got a whole separate set of rules than any other part of the entire world. So they finally go through it. And I will never forget, as I'm standing there by the hood of the car and he's going through everything. He's like bracelet, cigarettes, lighter, gum. Let me tell you, I had everything but the kitchen sink in there. And then he says, aha, I always save the best for last. And pulls out the bag of meth.
Oh, no.
And I'm handcuffed. I'm thrown down on the hood of the car, and I'm handcuffed. And I'm hysterical. They take me to jail. And I have to bond out. Somehow my parents are called back here in Mass. I think the guy that I was with called them or something. He was probably asking them for money, to be quite honest. I think my dad gave him the $500 to bail me out because it was a $5,000 bond. And I'm like, $5,000? What? So I'm out on bond. We're back at his dad's house. His stepmother's just giving us some bullshit. We're like, what? We're stuck now, like out in the middle of nowhere. We decide like a week later to take off. We go back to the house that we got caught at. We're up for days and we're cooking in the whole nine. We all decide to then go back to his father's house to get some more things. He was going to go to work with his dad. I'm with this woman who is known to the community. Her whole family is. And she's really bad news. And he and I got into an argument about something. And he ends up leaving with his dad. And we're in his car. This woman is driving. I'm in the passenger seat. And all of a sudden, I see the sheriffs, because they have sheriffs there, coming down the dirt road. And I'm like, this is me after 8 days being up. I'm like, wow, I wonder where they're going. And they pull in. And what do I do but get out of the car?
Oh, no.
And I approach them like Billy Badass. And I'm like, hey, guys, what's the problem? And they're like, well, we got to call. Yeah, so I guess it's kind of funny. Like, so that guy, Matt, was arrested by the same guy. I was arrested twice in 8 days, 2 different counties.
Oh, shit.
And they're like, do you have anything on you? What's wrong with you? What's going on? What have you been taking? And I'm like, nothing. Now, this woman's in the car. We had left her house. And lo and behold, they don't ever search her, but they search me, my bag, that same goddamn bag again. And there was a matchbook from her house that had meth in it.
Oh, no.
And there I go again. And this big dude, big sheriff, like pushes me down to the ground and they haul me off again. So now I've got 2 counties, 2 bonds, and I'm on a $50,000 bond.
Oh, no.
$50,000 bond for possession. And when I tell you the amount was like maybe 0.2, it wasn't even a half. It was nothing. I was in jail for a couple weeks, looking at 5 years prison time. And my parents ended up getting me a lawyer, a private attorney, and I was supposed to get a year probation. I end up getting 2 years probation. I'm convinced that he's working with the people that we used to cook with, because that's how we got this lawyer's name. I continue to use every single day. And 14 months into my probation, I get caught. I piss dirty for cocaine. And I'm like, well, that's weird. So my options are either admit or send it to the lab. And I'm like, if that thing goes to the lab, it's going to pop like a Christmas tree. So I admit to using and they let me go. So they could have either taken me that day on a violation of probation, or my probation officer let me go. And he said, are you going to run? And I said no, because my only option was to come back here. Now I've got a pissed off ex-husband, my son's dad, who's just looking for any reason to come after me. You know, I'm putting my parents in jeopardy. They've got like my siblings' addresses. Like when you fill out bond paperwork, they want everybody's info. So they knew where everybody was. Not that I was going to go to my sister or my brother, but I wasn't going to go. I wasn't going to leave. Like, what are my options? You know, I didn't have a passport, so I wasn't going to Mexico. So I just stayed and I waited. I ended up doing 6.5 months in county jail.
Oh, shit.
But I open pled to the judge. So I didn't know what was going to happen. I could have gotten 5 years prison time. And that was terrible. And that was scary. And to have to call my parents and tell them I violated, tell them I pissed dirty. You know, I lied to them about what it was or how I got caught. And they supported me. They sent me money. They put money so I could call them. My mother would watch my son. And they got me back home. I really thought there was a time that I didn't think I would make it out of Florida. I didn't think I'd ever see I literally never thought that I would see my parents. I didn't think I'd ever see my son again. I would, you know, just pray every day that I wouldn't wake up. And I make it back here. And seemingly I do well. And I had my 3rd child, my little girl. And, you know, I started a job and I worked at a local food chain, Market Basket. I was there for years. And I had kidney stones, which brought back narcotics again. I had a C-section that I didn't expect with her, more narcotics. And that beast just came alive again. And I started using again. And her father and I split up in 2019. Then I went back to heroin again.
Wow. Okay.
And so the last use, and this is like the big one, was again this reoccurring September 11th. So the pandemic happens, you know. We have shared custody of my little girl. My son lives with his dad. My oldest daughter is away at college and she's living with her father. He's had her for the past 10 plus years. I went to the doctor because I was congested. I couldn't hear. And I was like, oh my God, it's COVID. It's the coronavirus, you know? And I'm drinking heavily and I'm using heavily. And I didn't see my regular primary. I saw a nurse practitioner who I had never seen before. And my problem is I'm honest to a fault. So I will just diarrhea of the mouth and just say the most honest thing without realizing what I really say. And in the conversation, I'm talking about how my brother and sister-in-law had gotten COVID. My daughter had gotten COVID. I said, and they're healthy and they don't drink. They're not alcoholics. They're not drug addicts. And she's like, what do you mean? Now I think I'm at the doctor and I'm free, clear, good, whatever.
Oh, no.
And I tell her I'm using heroin every day.
Oh.
And I said, but I don't want to go to rehab because I've got a little baby.
Oh, no.
And I can't leave her. And I left the appointment.
Oh.
And she said, oh, well, I'll have someone call you from one of the rehabs around here. They had a Suboxone clinic. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing Suboxone. I'm not going, like very arrogant, but yet very sick. And the guy I was seeing at that time, he's like, what the fuck would you say that for? He's like, they're going to call DCF on you.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, no, they won't. I'm like, that's my doctor. They can't. No, they won't. That was September 4th. It was a Friday. September 11th, the following Friday. And I was just on this road today and I was thinking about it. I had gone to, there's a liquor store in New Hampshire. So it's like 15, 20 minutes. And we would go and buy cigarettes because they were cheaper in New Hampshire. And we would go and buy cigarettes there and we would drink. It's about noontime on a Friday and the service wasn't good there. And I get back in the car. Now I have my little one who's 4 at the time, had a missed call from my mom and there's a voicemail and she's hysterical. And she said, Jane, there's 3 women here waiting for you. And I knew, I'm like, fuck, DCF is there.
Oh, my God.
So I have my 4-year-old. I have my little girl. I've already been drinking. I've already been using.
Oh, my God.
He's like, you're dropping me off at the house. I'm not going to the house with you. Give me everything you had. Give me all your liquor. Give me this. Give me that. Blah, 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 blah. And now I've got to go home. I've got to go to my parents' house where I'm living. My mother's retired. My mother knows nothing about drugs. And they have told my mother, your daughter's using heroin every single day.
No.
And I show up there and my mother put them out on the patio. She wouldn't even let them sit in the house. And they questioned me. And of course, I denied it. They had asked if I had ever had a problem before. So now I'm like really fucking spiraling because I admit that I used to use heroin and meth back 10 years ago. But I never say, yes, I am. I just keep saying, no, no, no. And they're like, okay, we want you to go for a drug test. If you pop, it's going to be worse for you. And, they play this like good cop, bad cop with you.
Totally.
And I'm like, you guys are full of shit. And they start questioning my daughter who's 4.
Oh, no.
And they're like, I had this big, like a Yeti cup. And they're like, what's in mommy's drink? And she's like, tea, iced tea, 100 times a day, iced tea. Which it was legitimate. I always had iced tea. Listen, I wasn't messing around mixing any drinks. I would drink straight from the bottle. Like, who has time to mix a drink? Because I got shit to do. And it's just to get sloppy. And then they asked her if people ever touch her private parts. And she turned her little head to me and she put her head on my chest. And my mother gasped. And I said, no. I said, that's not what this is about. And they said, you need to call her father to come get her right now. And you need to go to rehab.
Oh, my gosh.
And I said, I relapsed and DCF is here. I need you to come get her. And he came up and I really was expecting him to be pretty terrible. And he wasn't. He said, are you okay? And I said, I'm really sorry. She's been with him since September 11th. 2020. I went to rehab September 15th. So that's my clean day, September 15th, 2020. And I did a 30-day program. I was on lithium for a week. My alcohol level was so high when I checked in that I didn't even pop for opiates. So I don't know if there was fentanyl that I was doing at this point because nothing came up. Opiates didn't come up and heroin didn't come up. But I was for sure using and had used a ton. Like they had to come into the bathroom, get me off the toilet. I don't remember the ride. My parents brought me there. And I remember, I didn't know this, but my younger brother and I are the 2 bookends. I'm the oldest, he's the youngest, and he struggles. And he said he saw me the day that I got into the car. And he said, you were asking for more and you were really bad. And I didn't remember that. He told me that a month when I got out. I went through a detox program there. They did a 40 milligram taper of methadone. I went to the next, like I graduated. I was in detox for 15 days because they gave me lithium at first, which I felt great until the lithium wore off. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm withdrawing from lithium and heroin. Like, get me out of here. I ended up going to this, like the graduated course, the CSS for 15 days. And I graduated after 30 days. One of my first meetings there, they asked me to open up the book, the big book, and to read a story. And I'll just read this quick. It was Crossing the River of Denial. And when I read this, I got really upset. And it said, she finally realized when she enjoyed her drinking, she couldn't control it. And when she controlled it, she couldn't enjoy it. And I started bawling. And I'm like, that's me, because I tried to stop. I hated every second that I was doing it. You know, I was using before I went to work. I was using at work. I was drinking. And I hated every second. I didn't know how to get out. And I would pray to God, like, please get me out of this. Kill me, cure me. I don't care. Like, I'm lucky that I didn't overdose with her. I'm lucky that I didn't, crash with her in the car. I had to tell my dad. My mother called my father at school and told him to come home. And when he got home, I had to tell him, like, Dad, they just took Eva. I have to go to rehab. And I started using heroin again.
Oh my God.
And I thought he was going to lose his mind because I've seen him super mad at me before. And he said, oh, well, I thought you were drinking. He's like, I thought you were stealing liquor from my liquor cabinet. I'm like, Dad, I'm 43 years old. I can buy alcohol. But I'm just like shocked that he didn't say anything about that. And, they supported me. I went back to their house and, I was reading like your questions and what I did. And I remember I went to all the groups and I participated and I spoke to the counselors and I was so pissed that they had taken her from me. And now keep in mind, I have 3 children. I don't live with any of them. But I realized at day 28 that if they hadn't come in and taken her, I'd probably be dead or worse. I never had to do anything to get drugs. But I mean, you hear it all the time, especially women. I thought I have to really do something different this time. Like, what am I going to do? And I kept hearing people, places, and things, people, places, and things, people, places, and things. I quit my job. I literally surrounded myself with my parents. I had no job, no kids, no friends, nothing. And I threw myself into my recovery as hard as I threw myself into my drug addiction. And I'd go to 3 meetings a day. I volunteered to do an IOP program. I would journal every morning. I'd get up at like 3:34 in the morning. I would roll out of bed. I would thank God for keeping me sober, for waking me up sober. I would write a gratitude list. I was going to the gym every day. And that's what I threw myself into. Almost 2 years ago, when I was at the flower shop, the owners who I've known forever, the gentleman said to me, he was like, oh, what are you doing? Are you still working at the grocery store? I'm like, no. And he's like, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, nothing. Just, kind of working on myself. And it wasn't like, a secret that I had a problem. So he's like, oh, how would you like to come back and do a couple days? So I feel like they saw that I was so different from 10 years ago. And it gave me another chance to come back. I'm grateful. I finally being sober, because I never thought, like, I always wanted to be like a mom, a wife, have the house. And I always thought like, how do these people do this? Like, how do you not drink? How do you not do drugs? I always wanted to be normal, but I never felt that way. And, the first year of sobriety flew by and I was so happy. And all I had to do was work on myself. And I finally closed my case with DCF after 14 months. And that was just a whole horror show. I mean, I feel like they were really unfair, but that's not why we're doing the podcast. But, I had to really work for that. And I had to, prove myself with them. And I had supervised visits for 4 hours with her. And how terrible is that? She didn't understand what had happened. All my kids have been to meetings. They have seen me get my 1 year and my 2 year. The little one has come to many a meeting with me and has even said, like, oh, when are we going to another meeting? Or, I really like those meetings. Or she has listened to me give a very general, if I'm either chairing the meeting or if I'm speaking at the meeting, it's very general because she's, she just turned 7. So it's scary for her, I'm sure. And like, she'll see me get emotional and she gets emotional. But I don't hate the sound of birds in the morning. I don't hate the sight of the sun in the morning. I have money in my pocket. I can help my parents, and I'm not doing it because I need something or I want something or I'm taking something from them. I call my brother every month and say, hey, I have a year. Hey, I have 8 months. Hey, March 15th, I'll have 2.5 years. So, I'm getting things back. I feel good about myself. I can be a good mom. I'm a mom from a distance, and I try to accept that. But I'm present, whereas I wasn't present. They can see me sober. They can see me happy. So, yeah.
Wow.
I don't I don't really know what else to. I mean,
no.
I have a partner who's in the program. I heard you say if it wasn't for your addiction, you wouldn't have met Skylar. My partner and I went to school together. I've known him for years. And I saw him at one of my first meetings after graduating from, the program. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, oh God. Like, I didn't want to run into anybody I knew. And he waited for me outside of my car. I'm like, oh, what the fuck, man? Like, get out of here, dude. Like, I'm not trying to see anybody. But, we have had very similar parallel stories. And he knows the good, the bad, and the ugly. He was able to get custody of one of his sons back. So I'm able to be a bonus mom and take care of a child that's not my children, but I can help with another child, and I can see my kids, like my daughter, one of my daughters, I can almost throw a rock to her house from here, like where I'm sitting right now. The little one I'm going to go pick up when we're done. And I told her, I said, well, I'm doing a podcast. She's like, no, you're not, Mommy. You're not doing a podcast. Yeah, right. You're lying. And I'm like, she's like very into YouTube or watching videos. So I was, kind of like for me, it was a big deal. Like, oh my God, like I'm going to do a podcast. So she was really funny
It is
about
a big
it.
deal.
And
It is a big deal. And I hope she's.
I thought it was a big deal. I like called my parents like, oh my God, you guys aren't even going to believe what just happened. Like this is like celebrity. In my world, this is celebrity status.
So, first of all, I have to say thank you for sharing so vulnerably and so honestly everything that you just shared with us. Like, so there's like a resonant theme that's coming through my mind, which is that you are like such a fucking survivor and you are such a fighter. I'm so proud of you. I'm literally starting to cry right now. I'm so proud of you. And like, I didn't really know, like, I knew a little bit about your story, but I'm just really honored that you're like choosing this medium to share this. I know that it's not something that you normally do. And there are so many women listening that have been in your exact same situation or are in your same situation. And they're going to hear this and they're going to feel empowered. And you're so brave. Thank you for sharing everything that you just shared today. I'm kind of blown away.
I hope it was, clear and concise because there's a lot to it. And I try to keep the bullet points, but it's tough to say I'm a mom, but I don't have any of my children. I don't have them in the traditional sense. And sometimes I have to remind myself, like, I don't have my children the way I want them, but I have a young man in my life who is estranged from his mom for reasons that are not, it's not my story. It's not my path, but I feel like, well, I care for him the way I would care for my own. And I love a child that I didn't birth. And I fight for the people that I love and I fight for what I believe in. whether or not someone else thinks it's a fight or a good fight or whatever. And I say that to Michael all the time. I say, Michael, I fight for the people I love, and God help the person that looks at them, says something, or acts out. And it doesn't matter who it is. It could be a cat, a dog, your mother, your grandmother, the person down the street. If you're going to get sideways with someone that I care about, it's a done deal.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm always hoping for someone to get squirrely.
So you mentioned meetings. I want to talk a little bit about your recovery. So you do 12-step. That's the recovery that you've done?
I do. Yeah. We do AA meetings. And, we, like I said, I re-met Michael in the meetings, but we do our own program. He has a business to run. I do kids in our house and my job. So sometimes we go to meetings together, and one of the meetings we go to on Monday nights, they break up. They do like a beginners meeting in this back room, but I will go in there because a lot of the old timers are people that have time under their hands. It's a smaller group. And even though a lot of the people we know, because, I've been going there for 2.5 years, the people, sometimes you feel better in a smaller setting, and like maybe he'll stay in one room and I'll go to a different one. And what I say is, I'm like, I can talk about him at a meeting, and it doesn't have to be, I can say what I want, be like, I've got some real resentments towards him today. But we do our own program. But yes, I go to their 12-step meetings. I've worked with women starting to do steps, or having sponsors, or calling people, or checking in with people. But I feel like you have to find this like fit, and it's tough. I don't know what it's like in California. I don't know if there's like a good recovery women, like a lot of women. I have a few.
Okay.
But there's a lot of men that are, that are at these meetings.
Yeah, yeah. So what would you say is like the most important part of your recovery right now? Like, which part of it is what's gotten you to, you're coming up on, well, you're at 2.5 years.
I'll be 2.5, March 15th.
Okay.
My family. I have a good support system. I say that my circle is so small, it's a period. And that's fine. But my parents have never, ever, they support all 4 of us. I think they can sleep at night knowing at least I'm okay. They don't have to worry about me. Michael is we support each other because we know the program. We know what it's like to be an addict. We know what it's like to lose. We know what it's like to gain. I always thought it would be kind of, and they always talk about like the 13th step, or don't date, or don't do this, or don't do that. And we had known each other before, but it's nice to be able to share, or to talk to someone. Like I can say, hey, I feel really resentful about this, or, oh, hey, I feel like this, or I can't say that I ever really felt like using. I did have a surgery in October. It got a little squirrely with the 12 pills they gave me. And I'm like, I can't believe that I feel this way. I can't believe that 12 pills got me spiraling again. And he was just like, don't dwell on it. You didn't relapse. You are talking about it. You're fine. It's over, and we're going to move on from it. You can share with someone because they know. It's difficult to share with people that don't understand what an addict's mind is like. Or like I say, the switch was flipped. And that's how I feel. Or like the beast woke up again. And it literally can happen like that.
Yeah.
I have a good support system. My oldest daughter is rooting me on. We're super close. My son and I are close. The little one and I had to kind of let her go in a sense, because I said to her father, she's been with you for 14 months now. I don't want to disrupt her life, because her life was disrupted instantly when I had to make that phone call. She was used to seeing him and having visitations and like part with me, part with him. She wasn't used to living with him. And he bought a house, and then they got dogs, and his mother came to live with them. So she's very comfortable in this nice house that she has. And I thought, what an asshole for me to expect to just take her back when they, were taking care of her all this time. So I asked what what he thought would be the best for her. And he said that she stay where she is. And I had to accept that. I don't like it, but I had to accept it. But I can see her and get her and keep her whenever. It's kind of a hard pill to swallow, but my dad has always said, or I think he's afraid that if I take on too much, and I do take on a lot, that there's the setup for a relapse.
Yeah. Wow. Do you have anything?
I mean, kind of blown away.
I am
It's
too.
a wild story. I mean, I can relate about. I mean, I definitely get like I have some friends that are in prison right now for some gnarly shit that happened on meth. Like just chaotic, and it was. I mean, I totally relate to that. I mean, I don't have kids, so I mean, I have some experience with DCF though.
Right.
I get that. I totally get that. As a child, not as a parent. I can't even imagine.
I can't imagine as a child, because I know what it's like as a parent, and it's the most terrifying thing ever. And
tell you, you're putting her needs first, though, right now by what you just said, not disrupting her home environment, as hard as that is. Like, that is the process, and that is the program, and that is what recovery looks like. And it's like manifesting in you in this like selfless decision that you're making and this choice that you're making. And, throughout the episode, anytime you referenced family, your parents, your brother when he had to see you, when you were asking for more, your children, like, those are the moments that you're been like breaking a little, right? And you can tell that your family and like the value system that you have around family is just so important to you. And you're fighting to like get that back and to maintain that. And I'm blown away, and I'm so impressed, and I'm proud of you. And I don't think I've ever just like sat here with a guest and said that, but like, I'm going to say it to you now. Like, I'm so proud of you. I wasn't expecting the story, and I'm really proud of you,
Thank you.
So if someone is listening and they're really new in recovery and they're in a situation like yours where they've lost their kids, or they've lost, most of us lose something huge. What would you say to someone that was really new, a woman listening right now that's new and just lost something really important?
It took me a really long time to figure it out, but you have to be selfish. And I know that sounds wild because I've heard it, and I think I was selfish all these years. I stole. I wasn't present. I was not a good person. All the negative things. And I think, how can I be selfish now? But you have to be selfish, because if I waver, if I fall, everything I've worked for goes away. I can't imagine. This is what I think about. I can't imagine. First of all, my oldest daughter would probably kill me. She'd probably beat me up. And I don't want to piss her off, because she has her father's characteristics and mine. So it would be like a whole thing. My son tells me, I don't like the situation he's in. And his father makes it very known that, well, look at your mother. Your mother's a drug addict. And he fights for me. And he says, Mommy, I love you no matter what. And then I think about the face of the little one, of Eva, when they were asking her questions. And I remember the face that my mother had. Terrified, horrified, not understanding what heroin was, and asking me, she said, oh my God, that means you're shooting up. And I said, no, Mom, I'm not. And I think about that, and I think, I can't imagine having to tell them or leave them or not be present for my parents. I was up at their house shoveling yesterday. My dad's still teaching. My mother is retired and has been for quite some time, but I help them with things around the house. I'll be over there tonight with the little one, with little Eva. And, we'll laugh. And when they had COVID, I would get them food, or I would grocery shop, but I do it because I want to, and I'm able to, and I'm not expecting, like, I'm not going to ask my dad for $20. I'm not going to, I can help them out. I was able to help my oldest daughter out because I had saved money. I never would have been able to do that. I overcompensate with all the kids because I give them whatever they want. Every time I pick up little Eva, where are we going? Can we go to Target? Can you buy me something? Can we this? Can we that? Now, my instant answer should be no, but she gets everything. And my son's like, you get her anything she wants, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I'm sending you to Washington, D.C. Like, you get money to play your video games, or your ticket items are a little higher than, a doll. But I can do all these things because I'm sober, or so you got to focus on yourself. You have to be selfish, and you have to listen. And that's what I realized. Like, if you tell me to take a right-hand turn, I'm going to go hard left fast. And I would say the higher power that they talk about, and I always thought it was like, oh, it's God, it's God, it's God, it's God. It's whatever you want, but you would be surprised what happens when you wake up every day and you hit your knees and you say, thank you. Thank you for keeping me sober yesterday. I've gotten through really tough things, and it may not seem like the best way when it happens. Like, oh my God, I got arrested. Oh my God, DCF came in. Oh my God, they took the baby. But you realize it had to happen that way for me to be where I am today.
Yeah.
And I listen to people, and that whole people, places, and things, that's what I left there with. Like, ingrained in my brain was people, places, and things. I can't go back to the same job. I can't walk by the liquor store. I can't walk by the drug dealers. I can't go back to the guy. I can't associate with certain people. I have to be different. So it meant sitting at home with mom and dad, going to 3 meetings a day. My dad, and I told him I was going to say this, early in recovery. It was a Friday night. It's like 7:30. I'm sitting on the couch and we all have takeout. Me, my mom, my dad. I'm 43 years old. No kids, no job, no shit. He's like, boy, Jane, you must feel like a real loser sitting at home with your parents on a Friday night. And I'm like, I said, no, Dad. I said, the loser was a month ago. The loser that was nodding out in front of her parents, dropping her dinner. That's the loser, because I feel good about what I do now. I can be present for them. What I do and what I say is genuine. I don't have, there's no angle to it. So.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So what's next for you? What are your plans moving forward? I know you're delivering flowers, which just sounds like such a nice job, by the way. Like, that sounds.
Well, you run into all kinds of things. There's a lot of dogs out there, and everyone swears their dog is so nice and not going to bite. There's walkways that aren't shoveled, lots of ice. There's, someone said to me, oh, did they have their clothes on when you showed up? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, oh, he's a nudist. I'm like,
Oh
I mean, you get all kinds of weird stuff. What's next? You know what? I don't know. I've gotten back into the gym, so I'm working on myself again. For the past year, I really threw myself into the needs of this household and making sure children were taken care of, and there were situations that needed to be addressed. And I need to focus back on Jane. And I need to, I've thought about going to esthetician school. I'm not young. I don't know. We travel a lot. We have a lucky life. I need to remember that when I get down about not having a big house to put all the kids in, or try to blend families, and I struggle with that because it's not the Brady Bunch. So I just need to remember that every day that I'm not using or drinking is a good day. And, I don't know what tomorrow holds. I really try to keep it in today. And one of the counselors who I'm friends with used to say, I got to look at my feet and be where my feet are. And I think, you know what, that's perfect, because I always was like, well, what's happening tomorrow? What's happening Monday or Tuesday or next week? And I'm missing. So I really try to be more present. I don't know, maybe I'll, maybe the podcast will take off and, you'll need like a third person in California. I don't know. My passport, I keep my passport valid. Like, I don't know.
Oh
I
my
don't know.
gosh. Well, I can't thank you enough for your time. I'm so glad that you reached out to me.
It was just one of those weird things I do. Like, oh, hey, who do you have on? You just have your celebrity friends on? How do I get on there?
You know what?
Maybe I'll show up for a spin class.
And Nod Pod listening, if you want to be on the show, fucking let me know. Addicts that have survived, like that's who I want on the show. You know what I mean?
It is survival. And it's, I hear people say like the strongest people in the world are addicts in recovery. And I'm like, you know what? I would love to say this to my son's father. I would love to see him, like anybody do what we do every day. You run a business. I take care of a bonus child. I take care of my biological children. I take care of my parents. I work. I take care of this house. I'm an actual chef with real food, not the other stuff. Like I do. Michael said I slow played him for a while because I've been making some pretty good meals and laundry, but I don't know. Now I just lost my train of thought.
I was just saying the best addict is just simply an addict who survived, I can't thank you enough for your time.
You're more than welcome. I had a blast. I hope this face isn't just a radio face. I hope it's a TV face.
It definitely is. And I'm sorry.
Well, I was trying to like pull my forehead back to my daughter. She's like, Mom, you're making it worse.
Listen, Nate doesn't know what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, I shouldn't demonstrate it. I'm trying to pull I do that sometimes while we're talking. Yeah. I'm like this.
Well, I said that. I was like, I'm going to sit like this. And she's like, no, you're making it worse.
Yeah. Like pulling your face back.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like I got like a hill of potatoes on my head.
Oh, what? What?
It looks like where I get like these wrinkles right here. It looks like I got rows of potatoes right there on my forehead.
You don't actually.
That's what it looks like.
Okay, all right. He's 30 and he's.
Maybe we need.
Oh my God! To be 30, get out of here.
He just said to me, maybe we need to get Botox. Yeah, maybe. Maybe I should try that because I never have.
30? Oh God, I don't even remember 30.
I have a mobile Botox place in just pull up to the bottom.
Well, maybe one day I'll try it. Definitely don't do it now.
I did go to a medical spa. Someone that I went to school with just opened one, and I was in there. I'm like, listen, I'm not trying to have tilapia lips or like some crazy, I don't want to have a frozen face. I'm like, I just don't want. I want to look young.
Yeah. You will. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks for having me.